In this video, we're going to discuss the first part about how to do advertising within social media. In particular, we're going to go over some tips about what to do and what not to do across all the different social media platforms. And then I'll walk you through each of the social media platforms in terms of what they have to offer in this video, and we'll continue talking about more advertising in the second part. So first, let's start by talking about what is social media advertising. It's essentially one of the three different types of online advertising that we're going to discuss, and that's when you essentially use some paid way of getting your content that you're distributing via social media highlighted for an audience that you're particularly interested in targeting, right? So the idea is you can try to optimize the content that you're creating by making it as appealing as possible for the customers that you're trying to reach. You should always try to do that. But if you want your content to be seen in the feed, for example, of a lot of platforms, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to boost that content, somehow increase the chances that the people that you are interested in having seen that content actually finding it. And there is going to be very different ways of achieving that, and we're going to discuss here some of those. So what you might be trying to achieve with this essentially is try to draw attention to the content that you're posting in these social media platforms. And most platforms are going to enable you to choose your audience pretty narrowly, actually. Secondarily, although from a business perspective, this might be as important or maybe even more, you might try to increase awareness about some of your products, right? So you can actually do this using social media advertising. Eventually, also, you might consider creating traffic in either your website, so online traffic, or maybe if you have brick and mortar store, encouraging people to actually visit your store, right? And finally, another activity that you might encourage using social media advertising is encouraging your audiences to engage in some activity. That could be, for example, installing an app, or maybe signing up for a list where you can gather that information so that you can maybe target them in the future. So there are many different purposes that you can actually try to pursue when you're doing social media advertising. And depending on these goals, and most importantly, depending on the audience you're trying to reach, the different platforms are going to have different strengths and weaknesses, right? So what I'm gonna do for the rest of this presentation is discuss some broad tips basically on what to do in general across all platforms first, and then I'm going to walk you through some of the main platforms and what kind of strengths they actually have and when you should actually use them. So in general, when we're talking about tips, most of these we have discussed in passing already, but let me make sure that these are clear for everybody. First, most of the social media is actually consumed by users that are on their mobile phone. So because of this, you should optimize anything that you do in social media, but particularly your advertising campaigns for mobile. So that means if you're using images, they need to be able to be clearly understood by customers, even if the image is small, because remember the screen size on phones is going to be small, so the images will render small. So something that you can see clearly in your laptop, you might not be able to discern in your smartphone. So this is something that you should always consider. Number two, the messages need to be very concise. While there are some platforms that have encouraged this conciseness in general, like Twitter in the past, because in the mobile phone, you're going to have to scroll so that you can read text. The less you have to scroll, the more there is a chance that you are actually going to get the message. Because remember, scrolling is actually effort, right? And people, for the most part, are trying to achieve what they're trying to achieve, minimizing their effort. Then it is always very important that you leave very clear what it is that you want the customer to do in the ad. Visit our page, shop by clicking in this link, okay? Download the white paper here, right? Your calls to action need to be crystal clear, unequivocal, and they need to be concise. And then finally, if you have any links related to your advertising campaign, you need to make sure that they are mobile optimized, so the landing pages are actually easily seen and loaded in a smartphone. And also, in general, to keep that conciseness, you should probably use a shortened URL if you have a link included. Okay. And then finally, this is a common sense issue, but if these are your first forays into social media advertising, it is very, very important that you become familiar with the platform before you try to do any advertising campaign. Okay, and this has many implications, but the first will be you're going to notice that some platforms have a tone that is very different from others. So if you want to take extremes, LinkedIn and TikTok, for example, are wildly different in the tone on any postings that you're going to see. So before you try to do any marketing in general, but specifically advertising, which is going to cost you money, and make sure that you become really familiar with what your audience is expecting and what they usually see. So lurk before you interact, and interact before you market. Okay, and by lurking I mean just read plenty of posts and really understand things before you start interacting with people. And then after you've done enough interactions, then is when you can move to the marketing stage. Okay. More things. It is very important that as much as you can, you do testing. Now, most platforms are going to encourage you or give you the tools, if not encourage, to do A/B testing with your advertising. Facebook, for example, allows you to do this built-in within the campaign. And not only that, but it has smart budgeting that will basically do some A/B test, and then it will use the remaining of the budget on the, if you only have 2 ads, in the ad that has shown the best engagement in that testing phase. But even if the platform doesn't have these advanced capabilities, or even if you don't want to do the testing while you're doing the actual ad campaign, you can use your regular post to see what's engaging and what's not, and then build your campaigns based on those regular posts, right? Given that you do have analytics and metrics that tell you how the posts are doing in terms of engagement, you're going to have click-through rates, etc. And it is very important that you use that to your advantage, and before you spend money, you do some testing. It could be thematic testing, or it could be actual copy testing. Okay. Next, what you're trying to do is you're trying to build themes that help you develop your brand essence, right? So hopefully you already know what your brand stands for. Now, based on that, you're going to develop some themes or brand associations that you're trying to basically anchor into the cognitive structures of your audiences, right? Now, to do this, you need to build these themes, and then around these themes, you need to create campaigns. Campaigns are specific instantiations of that theme. Okay. Now, brand is the broader context, brand essence, right? These cognitive associations around the brand are the themes that you're trying to build. And around each theme, you can have multiple campaigns that try to portray that, right? So if you are Nike, this idea of just do it, right? Put in the effort, stop making excuses, right? There are many different commercials that encapsulate that theme, right? Okay, now those different ad campaigns should have within that theme different instantiations, right? And in social media, it's very important that you actually rotate those ads quite a bit. People expect fresh content. In fact, time passes a lot faster in a social media. So you are expected to see different things. Okay, that's how social media platforms are built, right? So this idea of rotating your ads, even though they all have the same theme, is very important strategy. Okay. Now, when it comes down to paying for your ads, there's going to be different options that you're going to have, right? And it really, at the end of the day, depends what your goal is. Okay. One typical metric that you're going to see a lot is this idea of cost per click. So that means that it doesn't matter how many people see the ad, you only paid for each person that actually clicks in the call to action or in the link that you have provided. Okay, this is obviously a very effective way of achieving your goal, but it could be expensive. It really depends on pricing, obviously, like everything else. Okay. Number two, it could be cost per engagement, and engagement here can be broadly defined. Okay, it could be a click, like we were talking about before, but engagement might be to write a comment, right? And so it depends on the definition of engagement that the platform uses, and based on that, you will only pay for the customers that actually engage with that in that regard. Now, engagement can be defined as watching a video for more than 10 seconds. Okay, so it really depends on the platform's definition. You really need to look into this carefully and see whether they mirror or map to your goals. The old-fashioned advertising metric is cost per 1,000 impressions, and for whatever reason we use the word mille for 1,000 because that's the word in Italian or traditionally even in Latin, right? So cost per CPM, it means cost per 1,000 or cost per mille. Okay, this is looking just at impressions. Okay, impressions, for example, in Twitter, is if you're going through your feed, you're scrolling down, anything that goes through the feed, it's considered an impression. Even if you're not clicking on it, even if you're not watching the video, it doesn't matter what you do, it's an impression because it goes through your, let's say, smartphone, for example. Okay. So as you can see, this is much more directly linked to awareness than it will be to conversion. Okay, if you're looking at it from a customer journey / objective perspective. Finally, one thing that you see more and more, and I think at this point most platforms, and not all of them have it, is an option to pay instead of just per impression, per optimized impression. And that means that the platform using some sort of predictive algorithm, right? They might call it machine learning or artificial intelligence if they want to sound cool. But it's basically a math model that using your input about what objective you're trying to achieve, let's say, for example, going to your website or installing your app. There are different goals you might have tactically, right? What they are going to do, what the platform is going to do is use all the data that they have available about their users to predict how likely they are to do what you want, let's say install your app. And based on that, they are going to charge you if they put that ad in front of the people that are more likely to do this, right? So this sounds like a very appealing thing, but it could also be more costly. It really depends on prices, okay? So all of these might be options in some platforms, in others you might only have a few, okay? And you need to really think carefully about which one makes more sense for what you're trying to achieve. Okay, the more optimized it is, the more targeted and the better it's going to enable you to complete your goals, but it could also be quite expensive. So you're going to have to balance those two out. Now, let's go over a few of the platforms that we have discussed in the past. The first one is Facebook. Now, Facebook, it's part of the Meta group like we have discussed, and because of that, it uses Ads Manager to basically help you understand your ad campaigns and optimize them, right? Now, what Facebook has going for it in general is that it's a huge ecosystem, right? So because of that, it enables you to reach almost any audience, right? Anybody from a teenager to older folks. Now, like all social media platforms, they lean younger than the average population, but within the platforms, Facebook is on the older side, right? So if you're trying to reach people that are, for example, Gen Xers, right? Facebook is a great place to do that, even though you can also reach Gen Zs, right? So it really, because it has such a large group of people, I would say Facebook, you should just have a Facebook, unless there's a very good reason why strategically you don't want to have it. Okay. Now, wide population of users, like I was saying, leans older, split about 50-50. Good. Now, it has really, really good tools for targeting. In fact, this used to be the standard for how to do targeting for many years, although by now most platforms have caught up, right? So they enable you to use all sort of variables to create an audience. You can create an audience based on who your customers already are, right? So if you have a list of people, you can just provide it to Facebook, and they will just build you a custom audience based on your information already, for example, of existing users or existing customers, right? But they do have some predictive modeling options. For example, one thing that they do is this idea of a lookalike audience, right? So once that you give them a certain list of people, what they will do is they will find people that have similar interests, demographics, geography, etc. within their ecosystem, right? So that you can find additional customers that are probably likely to be good prospects for you, okay? And they have a wide range of ads that are available, from single image, you can do video. There is this idea of a carousel of ads, which is kind of like a short story by using typically single images that are related to each other, right? You're kind of telling like a short comic, let's say, and that are somewhat interactive, right? The user needs to scroll either right, left, or up or down, right? So what this is going to enable you to do is kind of like tell a short story, what it is that you're trying to do with your campaign, and in a more interactive way, hoping that as they engage and scroll through the ads, maybe they will be more likely to do the CTA that you're interested, CTA, call to action. Okay. Instagram. Instagram in many ways is similar to Facebook in the sense that they are both part of the same parent company. So they have similar software, in fact, the same software suite it's used to manage the ads both in Instagram and in Facebook. It has very similar capabilities in terms of micro-targeting. It does lean younger when it comes down to the audience. So you should use that to your advantage when you're trying to decide on which platform to use. And it also is particularly well suited to brands that have some sort of visual appeal because of the nature of the platform. It's about images and video. Having said that, it has the same type of ad formats as Facebook does, but on top of that, they have this direct shopping capability where they can connect with e-commerce pages and directly enable customers to shop from their ads and or the posts that the person is actually putting in Instagram. So for small businesses, it tends to be a great place to start delving, if this is your start, into e-commerce. Twitter, like we have discussed, it's a different, very different platform in many ways, although they are moving towards video and maybe becoming more similar to many of the others. They use a set of tools that are under the umbrella of Twitter Ads Manager, which is the software that is used to manage campaigns within Twitter. They do have, they have improved, I would say, their targeting options quite a bit in the last couple of years. They were known for not having particularly good micro targeting in the past, but I think that's starting to change now. They enable you to do targeting based on a lot of behavioral aspects, especially themes and topics associated with the discussions in Twitter, right? So it's going to enable you to do keyword targeting, based on interest, like, what kind of posts they are actually engaging with, both listening and typing, right? So it's going to give you a possibility of targeting that goes beyond typical demographics, but maybe in a slightly different way as Facebook does. Facebook does a lot of stuff based on interest that are derived from other things instead of for engagement with different tweets, obviously, right? It does have the capability for lookalike audiences, like we were discussing before, and the audience tends to be, again, young, like all the platforms, but within young, definitely leans male, and it's quite political. So things can blow up pretty quickly on Twitter, both for good and for bad. In terms of ad formats, they have many ad formats. We have discussed all of them, except they also have text formats, which they are maybe not as popular in other platforms, but they are within Twitter. Then Twitter, we have discussed already. And then LinkedIn, it's, again, its own platform in many ways. It's geared more to do networking from a professional standpoint. So if you're interested in advancing in a business-to-business world where, finding prospects is important, LinkedIn is a phenomenal place to do that. Also, if you're trying to get talent because you need to hire people, LinkedIn, again, it's probably your place. And beyond that, in terms of the audience, it does lean older compared to some of the other social media platforms. So if you're interested in Gen Z, maybe a little early at this point, but if you're interested in millennials and even Gen Xers, definitely LinkedIn. It's a great place to reach them. You'll be using LinkedIn Campaign Manager if you are running a campaign in this platform. It's going to enable you to target by some of the same variables that we have discussed before, but the standouts, especially given the interest in hiring, are going to be industry, right, where the person operates and or the company operates, depending on what it is that you're interested in, and then things like seniority or job function, which are going to be very, very important if you're interested in reaching somebody to generate leads, right, or if you're trying to find somebody that you might hire in the future, right? So that goes beyond what typical platforms will offer you. So you'll have a hard time doing this, for example, with Facebook. Okay. What else in terms of ad formats? You have similar options to what we have discussed, from single image, videos, carousel, but they also have event ads and they also have document ads. Now, event ads is when you're trying to promote some sort of event. This could be, for example, a webinar, right? And you're trying to just get people to come and, listen, you talk about something, how to solve some problem or whatever. Document ads are also similar, right? So you might have created like a white paper, for example, and you might want the right people that might be interested in the white paper to actually go and download it. So document ads will be basically putting that white paper in front of people that might be interested and suggesting as a call to action that actually click and download it, right? And yeah, so if you're doing business to business, LinkedIn obviously is the place to do it. And then finally for today, I'm going to talk a little bit about Snapchat. Snapchat, it definitely leans younger, and not only younger but female, right? Quite a bit, as much as platforms go. So if you are interested in Gen Zers, Snapchat is particularly amenable to this, especially if it's females. Now, in terms of targeting, has similar options to what we have discussed. One thing that we haven't discussed that it's an option here is this idea of retargeting, which is people that might have in the past, for example, go to your website, right? So you might have information via cookies about this, and you can basically retarget those people, even though they are not current customers. They might have bounced off your website, and Snapchat can enable you to retarget those people. Same thing with app usage, etc., etc. And in terms of format, very similar stuff that we have already discussed, but on top of that, they do have a couple of things that are unique. One is this idea of lens experiences, where you use some sort of filter plus a video to showcase some sort of a story in a way that Snapchat is somewhat unique, although others are using these kind of tools and copying them maybe shamelessly. And the same idea with filters, right? Anyway, that's all I have for you.